Imagine a world where your phone, your car, your country's military, even your clean energy future, could be shut down with a single executive order from Beijing. This isn't a sci-fi script. It's the reality we face right now as China wields unprecedented power over the global supply of rare earth elements. These 17 obscure minerals are the backbone of everything from fighter jets and electric vehicles to wind turbines and smartphones. In the struggle for dominance, the world's two economic superpowers are now locked in a high-stakes tug-of-war over these strategic resources, and the outcome could reshape the very foundations of global power. The burning question: who will control the future, and at what cost? Let's rewind. For decades, rare earth elements were mere footnotes in global commerce, critical to dozens of high-tech products, but invisible to most consumers and, frankly, ignored by policymakers. Those days are over. Today, rare earths are the flashpoint of a new type of economic warfare, intertwining national security, environmental policy, and the relentless push for technological supremacy. How did we get here? The US and China, the world's twin economic behemoths, have danced a dangerous tango across decades. Trade imbalances, tariff spats, intellectual property accusations. The headlines often scream about soybeans, steel, or smartphones, but lurking beneath is a resource virtually no advanced economy can do without. Rare earths power the permanent magnets in electric vehicles, the precision guidance in missiles, and the color in your high-definition screens. In other words, no rare earths, no modern world. The story takes a dramatic turn in the 1980s. China, awash with mineral wealth and driven by a far-sighted industrial policy, invested heavily in mining and refining these critical elements. State-backed incentives, cheap labor, and minimal environmental oversight let China outcompete the West. By the 1990s and 2000s, American rare earth mines shuddered under the pressure. It was a classic case of short-term thinking, notes Dr. Julie Michelle Klinger of the University of Delaware. The U.S. let its rare earth capacity atrophy, assuming the market would always provide. Now that assumption is haunting policymakers in Washington. Fast forward to the present day, and China now controls an astonishing 70% of global rare earth production and an even larger share of the world's processing capacity. The rest of the world, scrambling to keep up. This dominance isn't just about economics. It's about leverage, the kind that can make or break industries, or even tilt the balance in war. Back in 2010, China quietly flexed its supply chain muscle during a diplomatic spat with Japan, cutting off rare earth exports and sending global prices skyrocketing. The message was clear. When it comes to critical minerals, Beijing calls the shots. For the United States, the vulnerability is as stark as it is alarming. Despite vast technological prowess, America remains heavily dependent on imported rare earths, the vast majority of them from, you guessed it, China. This reliance exposes the U.S. to potential supply shocks, wild price swings, and the specter of technological blackmail. As a recent White House official admitted, we cannot allow ourselves to be so dependent on a single supplier for materials that are absolutely essential to national defense and economic leadership. The U.S. response? A frantic, multi-pronged scramble. On the home front, Washington is pouring billions into domestic mining and processing initiatives. The U.S. Geological Survey is reassessing the country's own rare earth reserves, hoping to reanimate long-dormant mines with new investments in modern technology. At the same time, researchers funded by the Department of Energy are racing to uncover alternative materials, anything that could reduce or replace the need for rare earths in crucial applications. But the challenge is enormous. As Dr. David Abraham of Technology Metals Research puts it, breaking free from China's grip isn't just about digging more holes in the ground. It's about building a holistic strategy, recycling, working with allies, investing in next-generation materials. Every piece of the puzzle matters. Allies, in fact, are more important than ever. The U.S. is now forging critical partnerships with countries like Canada and Australia. Australia, in particular, is emerging as a rare earths powerhouse, with massive new investments in mining and refining. Meanwhile, Europe isn't sitting still. The EU is finalizing its Critical Raw Materials Act, a sweeping legislative package to make supply chains more resilient and less dependent on single sources. This scramble is not without costs or complications. Mining rare earths is notoriously dirty, raising environmental and social concerns from China to Arkansas. China's government claims it is steering its industry onto greener, more sustainable footing, but skepticism remains. Sustainable rare earth production is an oxymoron unless you fundamentally change the way extraction and processing works, warns Eugene Goltz, professor at the University of Texas at Austin. And those changes require time, money, and political will. But while the rest of the world plays catch-up, China isn't standing still. This year, Beijing imposed fresh export restrictions on certain rare earths, sending ripples through global markets. Prices for select elements have soared, hitting manufacturers from Detroit to Dresden. At the same time, China is channeling vast resources into R&D, striving to maintain its technological advantage and tighten its grip over global supply. The stakes are climbing. Rare earths are no longer just about shiny gadgets or faster computers. They have become choke points in the contest for global primacy. As Jane Nakano of the Center for Strategic and International Studies observes, rare earths are the oil of the 21st century, the fuel for everything from green tech to smart weapons. Control over these resources is a source of both power and vulnerability. The issue burst into the mainstream once again as President Trump and President Xi prepared for high-profile trade talks. With tariffs stacking ever higher and rare earths quietly weaponized in the background, the world held its collective breath. Would the two leaders find common ground, or would the confrontation spiral out of control? Yet even as negotiators scrambled, doubts remained. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tried to reassure anxious markets. "I'm confident that when President Trump and Party Chairman Xi have a call, this will be ironed out," he told CBS, but quickly added, "China is withholding some of the products they agreed to release. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe it's intentional. We'll see after the president speaks with Xi." Meanwhile, on the factory floors and in laboratories across the West, the mood is tense. Every day of uncertainty drives up costs, delays production, and forces manufacturers to rethink their supply strategies. Paul Sankey, an analyst at Sankey Research, captures the industry's anxiety. The price volatility is brutal. No one wants to get caught without supply, but no one can afford to pay triple for key materials either. And for policymakers, there's a chilling realization. Even a temporary disruption in rare earth supplies could send shockwaves through the entire economy. From the chips in your smartphone to the defense systems safeguarding the nation, so much depends on the continued flow of these minerals. The COVID-19 pandemic added fuel to the fire. Supply chain disruptions exposed just how vulnerable the global system had become, especially when it comes to strategic materials. Manufacturers and governments alike learned a hard lesson. Resilience matters, not just efficiency. Now, with China tightening the screws and Western nations struggling to adapt, the rare earth standoff has taken center stage in the global competition for technological and economic dominance. But is the world prepared for what comes next? As new trade barriers emerge and the race to secure rare earths accelerates, the risk of a full-blown economic conflict grows. The next move will have consequences that stretch far beyond Wall Street or Beijing's Great Hall, shaping everything from the price of your next phone to the fate of the green energy revolution. As tensions mount, one question looms. Will the U.S. and its allies find a way to break China's stranglehold? Or are we on the verge of a rare earth crisis that could shake the foundations of the global economy? The answer could define the next decade. So, where do we go from here? If the first half of our story was about how China became the colossus of rare earths and why that now terrifies Washington, Europe, and Tokyo, the second half is about the roads ahead and the stakes for all of us, whether you're a policymaker, a tech worker, or just someone who wants to know if their smartphone or EV will cost twice as much next year. Let's start with the future. The next few years could see the rare earths conflict become the most unpredictable front in global geopolitics. Experts like Dr. Julie Michelle Klinger warn about the weaponization of rare earths, a reality that looks less like a hypothetical and more like tonight's headline. We are already seeing the repercussions. China's latest export restrictions have triggered price spikes for some rare earth elements, sending shockwaves through industries from EV makers to military contractors. If you work in tech or manufacturing, you can feel that anxiety. Will your supply contracts hold? Can you pass higher costs to consumers? Or will your competitor in Shenzhen beat you to market? Now imagine three possible futures. Each one reshapes the world in a different way. The first is the most dramatic, an escalation into a rare earths trade war. Think of tariffs and restrictions not just as bargaining chips but as weapons, with both sides digging in. What happens then? Prices skyrocket, supply chains shatter, and countries scramble for alternatives wherever they can be found. In this scenario, the cost for everything from smartphones to wind turbines to fighter jets could double, or worse, production could just grind to a halt. Some analysts even warn of ripple effects, where entirely new industries are stifled before they can emerge, just because a handful of exotic elements suddenly become almost priceless. But there's also a second path: negotiation. Maybe, just maybe, leaders in Washington and Beijing find common ground, or at least agree to predictable, stable rules of the game. That might mean China guarantees minimum rare earth exports, while the US and its allies drop some tariffs and open up markets in return. It's a fragile peace, but one that buys everyone time. Industry adapts, prices stabilize, and innovation continues, though always with one eye on the horizon, wary that the truce could break. There is a third, subtler scenario: partial decoupling. In this world, the US, EU, and Japan pour billions into domestic rare earth mining, recycling, and the hunt for substitutes. Australia and Canada become increasingly important as new mines open and processing plants spring up. China, for its part, invests not only in keeping its dominance, but in moving up the value chain, making more of the high-tech magnets and batteries itself. The supply chains become regional, not global. The risk of sudden supply shocks is reduced, but never eliminated. And the cost? Higher prices, greater environmental impact, and a race for technology that feels like a new Cold War. So, which of these futures is most likely? In reality, we're heading towards a mix. Trade tensions continue, with each side testing how far they can push. New recycling initiatives gain momentum, and more countries step up as suppliers. The EU's Critical Raw Materials Act, for example, is already changing the conversation in Brussels. Australia's mines are getting record investment. But make no mistake, China's grip isn't about to disappear. Its technical know-how, massive capacity, and willingness to play hardball keep it at the center of the rare earth universe, for now. Dr. David Abraham puts it bluntly: the imperative for the U.S. lies in the formulation of a holistic strategy encompassing recycling initiatives and material substitution, thereby attenuating reliance on rare earth elements and fostering self-sufficiency. But even as governments race to diversify, the crisis has revealed something deeper. Our supply chains are highly vulnerable. COVID-19 exposed just how quickly global networks can unravel. Now, the rare earths conflict is prompting hard questions. What happens if the next shock isn't a pandemic, but an embargo in the South China Sea, or a trade war that drags on for years? There's another layer to this story: the environmental cost. Rare earth mining is one of the dirtiest businesses on Earth. As the US and EU race to catch up, they face a dilemma: how to extract these minerals at home without devastating their own ecosystems. China, for all its pollution, is now touting its pivot to environmentally sound rare earth practices. Whether that's real progress or just greenwashing, well, the jury's still out. Let's focus now on what you, the viewer, can take away from all this. Because this isn't just a battle of governments and industry titans. This fight ripples down to every one of us. First, awareness is power. If you're in tech, engineering, or even just a consumer who wants to understand why your next gadget might get more expensive, following rare earth developments just became essential. The supply chains that once seemed invisible are suddenly front-page news. Second, innovation matters. Companies that can find alternatives, whether it's new battery chemistries, magnet designs, or recycling from e-waste, will have a massive edge in the years ahead. Already, the U.S. Department of Energy is pouring funds into research to find ways around rare earth dependence. If you're a scientist or entrepreneur, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. Third, this is a wake-up call for policymakers. The comfortable days of offshoring resource extraction and just-in-time supply chains are over. The U.S. Geological Survey is now conducting a new, comprehensive audit of America's rare earth resources. Permitting reforms, fast-tracked mining projects, and international partnerships, particularly with Australia, Canada, and Africa, are all accelerating. If you care about your country's strategic security, now is the moment to pay attention and even get involved. Fourth, recycling is no longer optional. The idea of mining rare earths out of e-waste may have sounded futuristic a decade ago, but it's quickly becoming a necessity. With millions of tons of old electronics thrown away every year, the resource sitting in our junk drawers could help reduce dependence on foreign mines. If you run a business or work in tech, ask, is recycling part of your strategy? And finally, everyone should pay attention to transparency and sustainability. As new supply chains emerge, tracking the environmental and human rights impact of rare earth extraction will be front and center. The EU's Critical Raw Materials Act is a sign. Future regulations will increasingly demand clean sourcing and full traceability. That means opportunities for new kinds of certification, tracking technology, and green business models. So, are the US and its allies really able to challenge China's rare earth dominance, or is a rare earth crisis just around the corner? The honest answer is, the world is changing fast, but there's no magic bullet. China's dominance, built over decades, won't vanish overnight. Its control over processing, technology, and market share remains formidable. But the tide is shifting. Alternative suppliers are rising. Recycling is no longer a fringe concern. And governments, shaken out of complacency by trade wars and pandemics, are treating rare earths as the strategic resource they truly are. The ultimate outcome will depend on decisions being made right now, in boardrooms, research labs, and the halls of government. If diversification succeeds, the world could see a future where supply shocks are rare, prices are stable, and technological progress continues apace. But if complacency wins, or if tensions escalate, we risk a rare earths crisis the likes of which the world has never seen, one that could halt entire industries and reshape the balance of global power. Here's the secret fact few realize. The rare earths in your phone, your car, or your wind turbine probably changed hands dozens of times across multiple continents before reaching you. The global web of rare earth trade is so complex and so fragile that a single political decision can ripple through the network in days, if not hours. Our modern world balances on the knife edge of these invisible elements. Without them, our digital lives, green transitions, even our national security could all falter. So what can you do? Stay curious. Demand transparency about where your products come from. Support innovation in recycling and sustainable sourcing, whether it's choosing electronics brands that invest in e-waste recovery or advocating for smarter policies in your community. And keep watching this space, because the rare earth story is far from over. If you found this episode illuminating, hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and let us know in the comments. Which future do you think is most likely? Are you optimistic that the world can break China's rare earths monopoly, or do you fear a crisis in the years ahead? Thanks for watching, and remember,